Hey everyone, it's Simone Watson, and today I want to give you some writing advice about something called suspension of disbelief. So, the last time I gave some writing advice, I talked about what a romance novel is, and I would like to go into more genres, but I'm probably going to use the term suspension of disbelief a lot when I talk about other genres, so this is something that is a good thing to, really establish, okay? So, what is suspension of disbelief? Suspension of disbelief is the extent to which the audience has to kind of like forget or set aside real world logic in order to understand, enjoy, and accept a story. Okay, so I would classify this as like suspension of disbelief. Oh, that's my brother. Suspension of disbelief happening on a world level, a world building level, and on more of a plot, logic, etc. level. So when you have realistic fiction, you have, straight up historical fiction, straight up contemporary, etc. Disbelief doesn't have to be suspended there because the idea is we believe that these things could happen. But in sci-fi and fantasy and, well, generally speculative fiction in general, right? That's what makes it speculative fiction, is that you automatically have a world in which disbelief is suspended. You automatically have a world in which, in Finding Nemo, fish can talk, that's the world. So one of the problems people often have with suspension of disbelief is raising the level of it too late in the story. Okay, what I mean by this is, and this is on the world building side of things, okay? You need to establish the world building of your story early on. Because if you get to the last like 1/3 of the story and there's a new world building element, you've just very much lost your audience because they were already willing to suspend disbelief at this level, but you're bringing it up to this level, okay? And that's not cool. So, okay, so I just talked about fish being able to talk in Finding Nemo, right? Because we know that early in the story, that's cool. We're willing to suspend disbelief to that extent. We're willing to be like, okay, fish can talk. That's something we accept in this world, and the things that happen in this world are going to be, affected by that important detail. But if you had a movie like The Shawshank Redemption, just first realistic film that came to mind. If you had a movie like The Shawshank Redemption, and then you get to like the last 1/3 of it, and oh look, there's a talking fish, you just lost your audience because you have added in an element of world building that requires suspension of disbelief, and you've added it in way late in the story. So first of all, don't do that. So in order to, I would say don't do that. And I would say in order to prevent this, make sure that you have these elements of world building established early. And if you've written the end of your story and you were like, oh no, something had to happen in the end, like plant some clues. Even if it's going to be a shock to us, maybe try planting some clues to us as to what that important world building element is that's going to be discovered. Do aliens exist? Okay, your characters can discover aliens exist, but does the rest of the story somewhat support that that's possible? You know what I'm saying? Because again, if it's like The Fault in Our Stars, and then towards the end it's like, oh look, some aliens are gonna come and like cure cancer, it doesn't work because you've already established this as a realistic world. So just keep that in mind. The other form of suspension of disbelief, in my mind, is the logic of the plot and the logic of characters' actions. This is something that you can very well see in a realistic story. Sometimes things are realistic, but they're not believable, right? So what I mean is like, okay, a horror movie. Well, horror movies are already not realistic, so that wouldn't really count because horror is generally considered a part of speculative fiction, so there can be ghosts and there can be all of that. But if you think about it from the logic standpoint, there are often characters in horror movies doing really stupid things that no one would really do. I mean, I can't say no one because real people do some stupid things sometimes. I'm not saying people are stupid. I'm saying people do stupid things. So, some of the things that are done in horror movies might be something someone would do, but a lot of times it's like, really? Are you gonna run that slowly from the ghost murderer guy that's trying to murder you? Like, really? So when audiences go to see a horror film, they are often expecting to suspend disbelief on that level if they know the genre. And this is another tip about suspension of disbelief. Understand the conventions of your genre. Okay? And then when you get into like specific genres, like when you get into psychological thriller, basically, there's something people call an unreliable narrator. And this is a plot device that can be really, in my opinion, it can be really good or it can be really stupid. There's no like okay book with an unreliable narrator. You either do it really well or you do it really badly. Okay? But an unreliable narrator is you playing with the suspension of disbelief on purpose, where the narrator is telling this story for like the first, 2/3 or 3/4 of the book and is like, yeah, and then such and such happened and then such and such happened. And you find out that actually that's not what happened. Actually, the real story is this and this. So as the reader, you're like, what? So this is an example of the author using your suspension of disbelief and what you thought to be true about this world and like turning it on its head in a way that is entertaining and satisfying for the reader. Or if it's not a book, the audience, right? So that is something you might want to consider. There is also, there are a lot of things connected to suspension of disbelief. There's something called breaking the fourth wall, which is something you may see in sitcoms or different things. And this is based on the idea that like in a sitcom specifically, or perhaps in like in a sitcom, you have like, so say I'm the sitcom, right? I have this wall and this wall and the wall behind me, but the fourth wall is the wall between me and you, the audience. Breaking the fourth wall would be if we're doing fiction and that wall is always there because the audience is always separate from the fiction, but then like the people in the fictional story turn and say something to you, the audience, or somehow acknowledge that the story is fictional or kind of poke fun at the story being fictional. This is another case where your disbelief is meant to be suspended more than usual, but it's in a way that's like funny or is funny if done well. You know what I mean? So that's something you might consider as breaking the fourth wall, but I have had people tell me like that I broke the fourth wall for like one sentence and they didn't like that, where I was like, blah, blah, blah. If I use the word you, if the book is not, if you're reading a book and it's not in second person, but it suddenly says you and addresses the reader, then that's breaking the fourth wall. I've had people caution me in my writing against doing that. If it's only for like a couple sentences, like don't do that. They want you to do it throughout if you're going to do it throughout. So I don't know. Your mileage may vary, but it is definitely something that tends to work on sitcoms when they're poking fun at themselves. So yes, these are just things to keep in mind with suspension of disbelief. Oh yeah, last thing, Deus Ex Machina. I do not like Deus Ex Machina. Most people don't like Deus Ex Machina. So Deus Ex Machina, it's a trope, but it is one of those tropes that is considered bad by most people. It is considered lazy writing. And Deus Ex Machina is when your main character is like, doop-a-doop-a-doo, and then there's like a problem, and your main character is like, oh no, what am I gonna do? And then some random force comes out of nowhere and solves the problem. Sometimes this can be something that does break the already established rules of the world, and sometimes it can just be something that's like hecka annoying. Annoying, unsatisfying as an ending, because generally we want to see the main character have agency and find their way out of their own, wow, that was really dramatic, out of their own problems. So, I would say don't do Deus Ex Machina. And the way that this intersects with suspension of disbelief, it depends, because it could be the world kind, but it also could be the logic kind, because it could be like, what the heck? How did this thing happen? Or it could be something that is logical, but just doesn't work well as a plot device, because Deus Ex Machina is usually a bad idea. I mean, in my opinion and in the opinion of a lot of people. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. I would love to see if you all have questions, and yeah, I probably did mention this, but the level of suspension of disbelief that is expected is something that can distinguish one genre from another. It can distinguish like a thriller from just like a story with some murder in it. You know what I mean? So yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know, and I will try and answer them in a different video. Okay? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.